I spent my whole damn life in the city. I could go for broke, but the capital is in me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. Anywhere I go, DC's coming with me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. I could go for broke, but the capital is in me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. Anywhere I go, DC's coming with me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. I could go for broke, but the capital is in me.
Welcome, everyone, to District Divided, a DC sports podcast, more specifically a Washington Commanders podcast, and football is back. I am Amit. That is my co-host, K. K. How are you doing today, sir?
It's back, baby. It's back. I was able to watch fucking Thursday night football last night. The Commanders are coming up. It feels good. It's been too goddamn long. Meaningful football has returned.
And
Snyder!
And no Dan Snyder. Exactly right. This is the very first regular season game in a long, long time that we have had new ownership. Congratulations to Josh Harris and the boys. This is exciting times. This is very, very exciting times. Feels like we're playing with house money a little bit about ourselves. Okay. Amit and K. The two of us, we are born and raised DC. We run this twice a week. We're going to do the preview show every single week against our opponents. And then we have the recap show that's going to come out Monday. All right. But for this episode, the way we're typically structuring the preview shows, we're going to get to know our opponents a little bit. So we're going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. Then we're going to do the Commanders offense against the opposing defense. Then we're going to do the Commanders defense against the opposing offense. And then we're going to give you our score prediction, our player of the game, and we have built a parlay for you guys. And we're interested to see what you think about it. We then jump into the comment mailbag as we do once a week. And then we go after the pod where we talk about whatever we want to. That's us. Let's get straight to it. K. We begin this NFL season, this glorious, glorious NFL season against the Arizona Cardinals, who, if you follow them at all, appear to be tanking. So Colt McCoy was lined up to be the starter. Kyler Murray's on PUP. We don't know if he's coming back at any point. Depends on who you listen to. But releasing Colt McCoy was a big deal. And that actually was a national story for a team that we already know is going to be bad. Jonathan Gannon, their new head coach, former Eagles coordinator, many of you will know, then talks about a competitive advantage when not deciding on a starter between Josh Dobbs and rookie fifth-round pick Clayton Tune. He has chosen Josh Dobbs that they traded for, 2-3 weeks ago at this point. K. I know you have a lot of thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals and what they're doing right now. Why don't you go ahead and take the floor?
So, being that now we are fans of the Dan Snyder list Commanders, it's much easier to not be in a glass house and cast stones. This is a clown organization. And what they've been doing over the last few years have been absolute nothing but clown shit. This is one of the most egregious, absolutely just fireworks and alarm bells and stuff going off. They're tanking. We all know what they're doing. They want to be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes as far as next year. They have 2 high draft picks going into next year because I forget who it is they traded with.
The Texans.
The Texans, right.
Texans got Will Anderson. Yep.
So everybody thinks what they're going to be able to do is try to do back-to-back because everybody did not expect the Texans to really do much this year. So they have an opportunity to go get Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr., which would be nuts, right? But if we're looking at any organization where you're going to look at these guys going, how many cracks have they had recently as far as quarterbacks and how often they just pull the plug on the entire thing? You look back at 2018, the Josh Rosen pick, top 10 quarterback they fucking pick up, right? Then they oust him as well as Steve Wilkes after 1 fucking year, not giving them any real opportunity to do anything. Why? Because the shiny new toy in Kyler Murray was available. Then they go and get him, right? Then they do the Kyler Murray thing for a bit. Then we hear about contract clauses, basically the Call of Duty clause in his fucking contract, because they got no control over him. And yet they still give him a fucking shit ton of guaranteed cash. And now he's hurt. And now they're already looking for his fucking replacement instead of working on the situation or trying to build him up or whatever. These dudes are fucking clowns. They do a terrible job as far as developing. And they do it. The thing is, if you're Caleb Williams or anybody else looking at this organization, do whatever you can not to fucking go there. I understand it's really hard to pull off the fucking Eli Manning thing that he did with the whole Phillip Rivers deal. The media and the way they treat you is going to be a hell of a lot different, but you cannot go to Arizona. These dudes are actively trying to lose. We're getting them more as far as the X's and O's, as far as what it is they're doing or what it is that they're doing from an X's and O's standpoint to show that they're trying to lose. But I don't think I've ever seen it this egregiously done in the National Football League. We may see it in basketball to a certain degree. I know that we've had our arguments on this about it going way back as far as is tanking worth it, is it not, this, that, and the other, right? These dudes are all in with they don't want to fucking win.
Which, by the way, makes them a perfect week 1 opponent for us because, hey, it doesn't even look like they're interested in winning. We, on the other hand, have reasons for optimism. Once again, Dan Snyder officially out of the building. Sam Howell has looked good in preseason as our starting quarterback. Eric Bieniemy has lit a fire for this fan base, and he has been just a breath of fresh air for a lot of us. And so why don't we go ahead and talk about that Commanders offense, right? Led by Eric Bieniemy, our new offensive coordinator, and Sam Howell, our new starting quarterback, against the Cardinals defense. K-Dot, one quick thing I want to point out to you about this Cardinals defense is J.J. Watt is no longer there, and Zach Allen is no longer there. They had 12.5 and 5 sacks, respectively. Those were their 2 leaders. The next leader's at 3. Okay, so and that's Cameron Thomas. So it looks like, and then you look at the Pro Football Focus defensive line rankings, they're dead last. 32 according to Pro Football Focus. So I know we've talked about the offensive line maybe being a question mark, but this is a golden opportunity for them to make something happen here, give Sam Howell his time in the pocket, and let him continue to build off of that preseason form and play well. What do you make of this matchup here, K-Dot?
The matchup is juicy. It's juicy for the Commanders, right? Now, once again, if we're looking at from a Commander standpoint, you've got a new offensive coordinator, a quarterback that doesn't have a lot of experience. There are to be expected growing pains. But if you want to have a game in which you look at the matchups and say, this will be a feather in your hat for motivation and confidence for you to do, this is a perfect launch point, right? Is this particular team. That's thing is, with J.J. Watt gone, they literally have not a single other person that's gotten over 5 sacks last season on that defense, which is nuts.
Over 3.
Over 3. Sorry. Yeah, over 3, because they get lost together yet. So then we're looking at, all right, so what do they have defensively and what is it going to match up as far as Washington goes? And there are 2 names that really stand out if you're going to look at anybody of the 2 best players on that defense.
Sure.
It's Budda Baker, the safety, plays all over. Made the Pro Bowl last year. He's somebody you have to watch. You have to keep an eye on.
Household name.
Good fucking player. We'd love to have him here or anywhere else. Your team would love to have him. And then Marco Wilson, who's not a name that I think a lot of people know, but he was the most targeted corner that Arizona had last year. And if you look at his pro football grade, like what he was leaving for quarterbacks was like what low 80s is what the rating was going to him. So he had some success, couple picks. He looks fairly decent. And I think what you're going to see with Marco is that he's going to be on one of our guys. So it's really, we know that Terry McLaurin was dealing with the issue with the was it hamstring? Or
I'm sorry, Terry.
What was
with
Terry?
The toe. It's the turf toe.
Right, turf toe. So Terry was dealing with the turf toe thing, but full participant in practice. Looks like he's probably going to go. And if that's the case, then I would see Marco probably lined up with him a lot, which will leave a lot of opportunities for the other catchers for the other receivers to really get some due. So I think this to me lines up for like a big Jahan Dotson day. If Jahan is really trying to make his, he's the guy that we think probably has the most upside as far as any of the receivers compared to what we've seen already. We already know Terry's a god. It's just what Jahan's going to do. I think he's going to have opportunities. Also, another name, De'Ami Brown. In the sense of if they do have a Marco Wilson kind of shadowing whoever the number 1 receiver is, which is always going to be Terry, there's going to be opportunities for some other guys to eat there, right?
Right.
So that's what I look at is Jahan, is De'Ami Brown, things like that. The other aspect of it as far as the defense is their rushing defense, at least last year, was not that great. They were 21st, I think, in yards, 31st in points. And we have, as far as the 2-headed monster, as well as the Chris Rodriguez thing that we also have. It should be a good day offensively. I mean, these guys, if we're looking across the league, you don't want to say any NFL defense or any NFL team is talentless, but I would say that they are bereft of most talent.
You can say, relatively speaking, this is a weaker defense when you look at it on paper.
Absolutely. Now, does that mean that they're young? Does that mean that they're hungry? Does that mean that they want to show up? Absolutely. You can't overlook anyone. But on paper, this should be an opportunity for us to look at our guys, see how the offense is really being run with Eric, for us to try to figure out what our identity is going to be. This is a team that we should dictate offense to defense, what it is that we're doing, who it is that we want to be. And I think those are the things to really look out for.
If you were to draft a defense to play against to begin your NFL season, I mean, the Cardinals are basically at the top of the list, right? So this is a golden opportunity to echo K-Dot's sentiments. I completely agree with you, K-Dot. One other thing I wanted to note, just from a statistical standpoint, is Jahan Dotson, once he came back from his injury, in those last 5 games, actually got more targets than Terry McLaurin down the stretch. So it is not unreasonable at all to be high on Jahan Dotson. It's not unreasonable to think he could lead this team in receiving yards this season. In fact, Peter Schrager of the NFL Network, very well-respected journalist over there, he has Jahan Dotson as his number 10 breakout player of the season across the board, across all 32 teams. So there is plenty of optimism. And you see that touchdown he had in preseason. I mean, the level of difficulty on that catch and then to evade the defender and score. I mean, lots of reasons for optimism around Jahan Dotson. While that secondary is a bit of a strength for Arizona relative to the rest of the defense with Budda Baker and Marco Wilson, expect some Brian Robinson, expect some Antonio Gibson, maybe Curtis Samuel a little bit, the way we like to use him in the running game, you know? So very curious to see how this all unfolds. Like you said, this is going to be Eric Bieniemy's very first time calling all the plays, right? This is his show. This is Sam Howell's very first start as the guy, right? So like we had week 18, he's playing with house money. No one's really expecting anything. He ends up having a nice day. Now it's his team. How does he react to that? We talked about the importance of preseason and making sure you get your reps under the lights and stuff like that. He had the national spotlight in preseason week 2. We snapped that Ravens 24-game win streak. Sam Howell was fantastic, right? So can he do it again now that the game matters, now that the game fully counts? We're going to go ahead and see about that. Why don't we go ahead and flip the script? Let's talk about the Commanders defense, right? Which is loaded with talent. It can be the best defense in the NFL against an Arizona Cardinals offense that is going to be led by Josh Dobbs. Go ahead, K-Dot.
Commanders D. This is going to be one of those situations where, once again, just like on the offense, we should be able to dictate a whole hell of a lot of what's going to be happening as far as their offense goes. Josh Dobbs had 2 starts last year.
He did.
He's 0-2 in those starts, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 2. This should be a game in which our boys go and eat, right? So, like, they're starting a new offensive tackle that they drafted high in the draft, Paris Johnson from Ohio State. Now, while I do think he looks like a stud, it's your first start against veteran pass rush and a veteran defense. These guys should be able to throw some stuff at him, and he's just not used to. It should be a growing pain game for him. Beyond that, just look, as far as the receivers go, Rondale Moore could be, when he's healthy, could be a hell of a talent there on their offense. I would say clearly probably the most talented as far as guys in the offense. I'd never look at him beyond more of a number 2 receiver in the on any other team, really. Beyond that, you got Hollywood Brown. I live in Baltimore. I can tell you when Brown went out to Arizona, there wasn't a single soul here that gave a fuck. I know people have looked at some of the stuff that he did inside training camp and practices and just dropping shit. Like, he's a dude that should worry you if he's got the ball in his hands. Sure, tackling things like that, need to make sure that you're doing that. But am I afraid of him? No, there's nobody really on that offense that I'm afraid of. But I do think what it does speak to more than anything for Washington is not falling into the same traps that we have been recently in the last few years with the Jack Del Rio defenses, which is they don't necessarily play deep. They don't play discipline to start off the seasons. A lot of times what ends up happening, and sometimes due to injury, certain guys out, and there's always a few weeks where the defense looks a little rough because they're not used to each other or playing off of each other, right? And that, to me, could be a recipe for James Conner, who's their running back there in Arizona, to potentially get some work. And potentially, if it looks like it did last season at certain points, some of these running lanes open up real nice, and there's not now sure tackling as far as the second level with the linebackers. Do not let James Conner beat you. Let this be a Josh Dobbs that has to drop back and try to throw on you. Emmanuel Forbes, your opportunity to shine, buddy. Let's start this career off with a pick. It's going to be there for you. Trust me, it's going to be there for you. If the pass rush can get there, this should be a team that we eat against. If we're a defense that's supposed to be looking at the talent level, one of those upper echelon defenses, then this should be a team in which you are scoring on and you are not allowing to score. Like, to me, this is shutout territory for this Washington defense. That should be what's on their sites, right? They should feel offended if this Arizona team scores on them.
I completely agree with you. And here's the thing. We've talked about how loaded this defense is from a talent perspective, right? I mean, we're talking 4 first-round picks on that defensive line. Now we've got a first-round pick in the secondary who has the NCAA record for pick sixes.
Yep.
Right. So one of the problems we had last season was getting turnovers. Well, look now, right? We drafted the best possible guy for that. And he's had a good preseason. A lot of his reports have been very good out of camp. And then you got a guy who's hungry in Kam Curl for that new deal, right? Chase Young too, of course, but he's been limited with that quote unquote stinger with the neck. But Kam Curl, I expect to have a big game. I really do. And on the other side of the ball, the only guy that sort of worries me, K-Dot, Rondale Moore. I think he's one of those guys where when he gets the ball in his hands, he is electric. He's able to make people miss. He's able to make really nice catches. So he's the guy that would worry me a bit because he's also not their number one, right? So it may be one of those things where he gets a nice little matchup now and then, maybe against a backer, maybe against a nickel court, like Quan Martin, for example. If he gets a lot of play, he had his moments, right, in preseason. That could be a matchup to exploit. But again, now that the lights are on, who knows? I mean, maybe we do have those guys step up and end up playing well. But make no mistake about it, this is shutout territory for this team. I expect big things. Let's go ahead and jump over to the line, and then we'll do our score predictions as well as our player of the game. So K-Dot, the line is Commanders -7 or 7.5, depending on what you look at. We'll call it 7. The over-under is at 38. I need a score prediction, a winner, and a player of the game.
24-10 Commanders. Jahan Dotson's your player of the game.
Okay, sounds good. I have 20-10 Commanders. I think we come out of the gates a little bit slow. I think it's 6-0 off of 2 field goals, and then Arizona scores a touchdown. We're like, what is happening? And then I think we end up pulling away. 20-10. My player of the game, Kam Curl. I think he ends up having an interception, maybe 2. I know there's a lot of talk about Emmanuel Forbes doing that. I think Kam Curl proves he is a stud to everybody. Not that we didn't already know that, but I'm going to go Kam Curl as the player of the game for the Commanders. K-Dot, we built a parlay. We built a parlay on BetMGM. We are in no way partnered with them, and we are in no way responsible if you choose to ride with us, but we would love if you did. That's all I'm going to say on that. Why don't we go ahead and tell you about that parlay that K-Dot and I have come up with. I will read it out, and then K-Dot, you can walk us through the thought process we had behind it. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Cool. So we do have the Commanders money line. We have Brian Robinson rushing for 60 or more yards. That's 60 plus yards. Rushing, specifically rushing. And then we have Sam Howell to score a touchdown. Not the first one, just any touchdown. And that is going to net you plus 550. So $1 wins you $5.50. 100 wins you $550. K-Dot, why don't you walk us through, once again, it's money line for the Commanders, Brian Robinson, 60 plus rushing yards, and Sam Howell, anytime touchdown scorer at plus 550. Walk us through the thought process we had.
Commanders money line. That's pretty self-evident. If we lose this game, look, first off, we're playing with the house money. Dan's gone, right? We know the valuation year. But if we lose against the Cardinals, it's about to be a long possible year. All right. I know week 1 shit, but we're all in on the Commanders win this fucking game. All right. They need to win. They should win this
100%.
game. So there you go with that. Sam Howell rushing TD. Sam Howell, that is something we've seen in the preseason. We saw it last year, and you see it a lot as far as his career at UNC. There's been some stuff that people have talked about as far as like Anthony Richardson, the very athletic quarterback that is there in Indianapolis. If you look at the rushing stats in college, Sam Howell trounces him. Sam Howell likes to run. And if things break down, he's got no problem running the ball a lot, actually. That'll be something that I actually think if you actually see how much he runs in college, I actually want to see less of that in the NFL. But it just feels good. It looks as though there could be easily a situation where Sam Howell drops back in someone in the red zone, sees a lane, and fucking goes for it. And we know, I don't think there's anybody but Budda Baker on that defense be able to stop him in his tracks once he gets those fucking momentum going. So let's roll. I said at least I didn't say let's ride. I said let's roll. That
right.
All right.
Hey, let's ride is next week.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later. Go ahead.
And then Brian Robinson, 60 yards. If you look at his stats from last year, 60 yards is a very, very doable thing, especially when Arizona Cardinals defense is not that great. I think that what you're going to see with Washington, especially Eric Bieniemy being the running backs coach that he is, he's going to want to give Brian Robinson his carries. And if this ends up being a situation where by the third quarter, we know that we think we probably much have this thing wrapped up, you're going to see a lot of Brian Robinson try to end this game, draw out the clock, keep it running. I think 60 yards, or we think 60 yards, very, very doable for Brian. All three of these legs, very, very doable, very much within the wheelhouse of what it is we expect this Washington game to go for.
Yeah, and so if I could also just add a couple thoughts. Number one, on the Commanders money line, if we don't win, the city's burning. Okay, so there is no podcast, there is no DC if we lose this game. Two, Sam Howell rushing touchdown or receiving touchdown. Who knows what Bieniemy's got lined up over here, right? I mean, it's basically, it's not a passing touchdown. It's rushing or receiving. Sam Howell is the one that scores the touchdown. We had those observations in the Week 18 game where he had 5 carries for 35 yards against Dallas, as well as in the preseason. See space, take space. I think his decision making is very, very good. If the play very quickly breaks down, he's not rushing, if that makes sense. Like he goes through a couple of those reads, maybe the whole progression, and then goes, you know what? My best option is to just take off over here. And I do think that with nerves maybe a little bit higher, it may just be instinctual to go, I'm not throwing the ball, I'm just going to run. So that's the thought over there. Once we get into the red zone, and the way I've thought about it, you know, if it's 6-0 and then 7-6 Arizona at some point, Howell maybe just cuts it loose and just runs a bit more to make something happen. And then Brian Robinson, 60+ rushing yards. Look, they're going to do everything they can to make Sam Howell as comfortable as possible. And that means handing it off to your bruiser in Brian Robinson, who's healthy this year. He was not shot this offseason, knock on wood. So this is going to be a healthy Brian Robinson from the jump. He says he feels excellent. He feels like he got that full offseason. He feels comfortable in the offense. So why not ride? Why not ride with that? So that is the additional reasoning I was going to provide to you as well, K-Dot. And now we jump over to the comment mailbag, which we do once a week. Typically, I mean, during the summer, that's all we've had is just the one episode a week. But here we are. We have 2 comments, one from, oh boy, because here's the thing, K-Dot. YouTube changed it used to be the name, now it's the @. So it's like this. BRXN Develli 5834 with a comment. Appreciate it. Definitely a first-time commenter. This man said, this is K-Dot, he was quitting jobs to watch the Redskins play. Chiefs fans, Cowboys fans, and some other teams, sure. But the Redskins is crazy. K-Dot, any reaction to
that? Because you're a first-time commenter and I want you to come back again, I'm not going to be as mean as I want to be. But yeah, it's called loyalty and dedication to the team you grew up loving, your hometown team, you know? Maybe, once again, being nice, maybe you weren't afforded the opportunity to have something like that, you know? Maybe you're a military kid, you moved around a lot. I'm going to choose to think positively on why it is that you can't comprehend that someone would be loyal to their squad. And while, yes, it might not have been the most responsible thing to leave gigs if I couldn't watch the Commanders on Sunday, I don't regret it a bit.
Thank you, K-Dot. I think you just explained being a fan, being a diehard fan of this team, rooting for a team you love.
Right.
That's what it's about. That's what it's about. It's plain and simple. BRXN Develli 5834. And then we go over to @mygenericnamo, also known as former co-host of the pod, Matthew Regan. It's going to be a long season, I think. He's got the lion emoji and the eyes emoji. Of course, appreciate the comment, Matt. That is in reference to the Lions kicking off the season 1-0 with a 21-20 victory over the defending Super Bowl champions at their place, the Kansas City Chiefs. And what a win for the Lions. That is now back-to-back regular season games where they have been nationally televised on the road and won the game. Kid, any thoughts on the Lions' victory over the Chiefs?
Wasn't surprising as much as I still picked the Chiefs to have won that game. Just because I'm not going to root again. I'm not going to say Patrick Mahomes can't do that. If you're looking at the Lions, they won 8 of the last 10 last season. They go into this season with arguably 1A, 1B, most explosive rookie back in football in Gibbs, who just looks like, oh my God, I can't wait to see him get a lot more carries. Against the Kansas City, and also very high energy. We all know Dan Campbell, fucking high energy guy. They're coming out the gate fucking swinging. That goddamn fake punt just set the tone.
Loved it.
But you also had a Kansas City Chiefs team that was playing without Travis Kelce. And they have the worst receiving core in all of football.
Which we saw.
Kadarius Toney is fucking garbage. And the thing was that I was one of those dudes was listening to him when he was playing for the Giants about, I don't get enough opportunities. I need to be able to do this. I need to be able to do that. You guys are just not treating me right in the offense. Fine. You go to Kansas City, motherfucker. It was almost a comedy of errors. Like, you know that they say that like quarterbacks rely on other guys to be able to make so. I've never seen him give so many guys chances and they just spit in his face. Like it was. And then I needed 25 fucking yards from Sky Moore. He dropped 2 goddamn balls that would have put me over. And then there's also the fucking holding calls. They had holding and false starts. It was a sloppy start for Kansas City. I really do think if you're looking at their offense and how much it is they have bent on Kelce being there, who's the best tight end in all of football, but he's also 30 plus years old and hurt. They need to be looking to potentially trade somebody. I would look at Chris Jones, who's old now. With the way that defense looked against Detroit last night, which was pretty fucking good, I'd almost look at him as trade bait and see what the fuck is out there in the receiving.
Wow.
Because I don't, and once again, you can see, I'm talking more about the Chiefs than I am the Lions, because fuck you, Matt. It's just, the Chiefs got to figure that out. Like, there was one thing as far as last year, without Tyreek Hill, I thought that Mahomes would get better. Mahomes looked incredible last night. He looked great. No one helped him.
I will go ahead and give you my thoughts on the Chiefs-Lions game after the pod. But for now, this was District Divided, DC Sports Podcast, more specifically a Washington Commanders podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like the video, please share the video, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and comment as you guys always do. We really appreciate it. We read them out loud. We get to interact with them. We get to interact with you guys. Enjoy the game on Sunday. We will see you again on Monday, hopefully with some shades on, K-Dot. But until then, enjoy, take it easy. After the pod begins right now.
Boom.
So I gotta lean back, as I always do. This is gonna sound weird. That was a good loss for the Kansas City Chiefs, if there were ever such a thing. It gave me more hope for Kansas City, seeing the way they played without their best skill position player in Travis Kelce. And without Chris Jones. Here's why. The Detroit Lions came into this season with Ben Johnson returning as their offensive coordinator, and they were supposed to light the place up, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, they have David Montgomery, who, like, okay, he's going to be their bruiser. They got Jahmyr Gibbs, who, my God, K-Dot, looked electric as hell. Not only was he that fast, he was hitting people. Yep. He was violent.
He's not afraid of contact.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I drafted him in our fantasy league. So, I was like, hey, just keep feeding him the rock. Like, because every single time he touched the ball, you got out of your seat. It was incredible.
It's great.
But Detroit, I don't think looked good on offense. I think they made a couple really nice plays, and that's credit to Goff. That's credit to the offensive line, right? But overall, I was expecting more. Yes, it is at Arrowhead. Yes, it is against the defending champions on Banner Night. Maybe my expectations are too high and now they're coming down a little bit. This could also galvanize the squad, allow them to go on to have a really, really nice season because there are very high expectations for this Detroit Lions squad. But I expected the offense to look better. And defensively, I mean, everything was available for Mahomes. He just had guys that couldn't catch. Rashee Rice had a drop, but then he had a touchdown. And after that drop, he started playing well. Justin Watson delivered over and over again. A lot of people don't even know who Justin Watson is. Justin Ross got one target. He caught it. And then Kadarius Toney. Let's talk about him. He was completely devoid of confidence. Completely. You could tell, especially on the last drop. He went out with his arms. That's something you see at Thanksgiving football. And you and I both know that because we play that game, with the Palisades boys. Like, it is one of those things where I could not believe my eyes that he was choosing to do it that way with his like arms and elbows and biceps versus his hands. So my thought is that he's still hurt, that Travis Kelce being out forced him to play more than I think he was comfortable with. He probably said all the quote unquote right things of like, hey, I'm good. I want to be out there, all that jazz. He did not look like himself. I've never seen him or any wide receiver for that matter played that badly. So something's going on here where he either thinks he ain't right still, or there's something else going on because I cannot explain the game Kadarius Toney had. But the rest of the receivers outside of Sky Moore, I thought it looked okay. And once Kelsey's back, it's fine. Mahomes was fantastic yesterday. So I have a lot of confidence in this Chiefs squad moving forward. I don't see them having issues. And if their defense continues to play the way they did yesterday, this defense is a lot better than people are giving it credit for.
Hang on.
Sure.
Where are you saying as far as confidence with Darius Toney? You're saying he doesn't look like he has any?
Yeah. Yesterday he did not.
But that he was like telling the team that he'd be ready or he's good. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Toney just sucks.
So I find that hard to believe because then you look at the Super Bowl he had.
Uh-huh.
Right. He was excellent in the Super Bowl, right? So he missed all of camp, basically. He missed all of preseason. He was just coming back from this. Make no mistake about it. He was the worst player on the field yesterday. Aside from the referees allowing Jawan Taylor to do whatever he wanted, that dude was false starting the whole game. Chris Collinsworth called him a slot receiver at one point, at the very end of the game. And they finally called the false start at the very end. Right tackle, they spent a lot of money on. Dude, it was driving me nuts. But Toney ended up having 2 game-changing plays against the Philadelphia Eagles, and God bless him for doing that because we did not need another Eagles Super Bowl. But Toney was excellent in the Super Bowl, and he clearly, to me, only because I cannot explain 3 drops like that, I don't think he's 100% yet. I think it's in his head. He's like, I'm not me. It did not look like a guy who prides himself on his confidence.
But the Super Bowl, he had 1 catch for 5 yards and a touchdown.
And a touchdown and the punt return.
Right? 2 punt returns, 77 yards. It's not him receiving. I'm saying that, like, he had 1 catch.
He caught the punt. He caught 2 punts.
God damn it, man. He had 1 catch for 5 fucking yards in the Super Bowl. Before that, against the Cincinnati Bengals, he had 1 reception, 9 yards. And then against Jacksonville, he had 5 receptions and 36 yards. But before then, if we're going to look at anything he's been doing stats-wise, right? Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, I rooted for this dude when he was in New York. And I got scolded by any of my friends that are New York Giants fans.
Sure.
For saying, fucking stop. Week 1 and week 2 of last season for the New York Giants, when they were still looking for who it is their receiver is going to be, right?
Yeah, that game against Dallas. Yeah.
So week 1 and 2, he has a total of 2 receptions for 0 yards.
I remember that.
Then he gets hurt. He's out for 5 games. Comes back, has the Tennessee game, 2 receptions, 12 yards, no touchdowns. The Jacksonville game, 4 receptions, 57 yards, and a touchdown. Then he's inactive, and he's hurt. They trade him to Kansas City. He has those 2 games for Kansas City. Then he's inactive for 3 games. Then he comes back. His grand total for last season with how many games played? Whatever. I don't even fucking know how many games played. 16 receptions, 171 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That's it. You know, I was talking to Brendan on the phone yesterday during the game, and I had a comparison, and this to me, he's great value version of this guy, Brandon Lloyd. Brandon Lloyd, you remember he came to Washington for a bit.
Oh, I was so excited when we got Brandon Lloyd. You've seen some of the catches he made in his career. Yeah. Brandon
Lloyd was a highlight machine.
Yes, he is.
Kadarius Toney in the Giants uniform has some fucking amazing highlights, right? But he never puts it together. And the thing is, Brandon Lloyd, it didn't really come together for him fully until like year 9 or 10. Like when he's in Denver. Like it didn't really, because when he was in Washington, he was complaining all the time.
Yes, he was.
Complaining all the time and never really showed out on the field. Like there were always some other guy in the receiving core that looked better than him or was more consistent than him. I just think Toney is just a dude that's got to figure some shit out. Does he have talent? Absolutely. But even with that aspect of it, like just catching the goddamn ball or looking like you're competent catching the fucking ball, his route running, there's all sorts of shit where you're playing with the best quarterback in all of football.
Yeah.
Figure it out, bud. It's just this receiving core has been one that Kansas City has neglected for quite some time. And post Tyreek Hill with the Travis Kelce thing, Mahomes got better last year. But Kelce being on the field changes the entire dynamic. And I'd also go as far as to say last night, I did not like the way Kansas City called that game. It was one of my least favorite, which got me to a point where I jokingly texted Brendan, was like, are we going to find out that Eric Bieniemy was actually
For those that don't know Brendan is a childhood friend of K-Dot's, friend of the show. And he's been on the show before. He's a huge Packers fan.
And I date his sister.
And he such a good friend that go ahead.
But I was floating there. Is Eric Bieniemy really the reason things went in Kansas City?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is Eric Bieniemy going to that thing?
But hard not to think it, right, K-Dot? No, I'm just.
But in the first half, Mahomes was your leading rusher,
right?
And he had more carries than anybody else in the first half. I think he had like 4. Pacheco had 3. Hilaire had 3. And I'm looking at Pacheco, like every time he touches the ball, he looks angry as fuck. But if they went away from it so fucking early, trying to get Mahomes to gel with one of the receivers, and it just didn't work out. It just wouldn't work out. And if everything they have is riding on Kelce, who's hurt and 34 fucking years old.
Yeah.
It's not okay.
Yeah, 34 in a month. I'm looking at Toney's drop statistics because I'm curious to see, is this something he just does regularly? Right. Yeah. On 20 targets last season in the regular season, he had 2 drops. I think that's high, to be honest.
10% drops?
10% drops. Then on 10 targets in the postseason, he had 1 drop. So we're pretty consistent on the 10%. Yesterday was an 80% drop rate or something like that. And his 1 catch was a little shovel pass. This is why by the way, for 2 yards, this is why I wanted PPR out of our league altogether, because that just got rewarded. Right. Anyway, that's an aside.
It's a half point.
It shouldn't be. He caught a shovel.
Yeah, it's half point.
Okay. It's just ridiculous. The first down, by the way, is pretty exciting. Seeing the points for the first down when Jahmyr Gibbs got one, I was like, oh yeah, he made a play. He should get a point for that. Nice. Anyway, Toney, hey, maybe it is one of those things where I'm clouded by the talent. If Matt Regan is still watching this, he and I are both huge Arsenal fans. We have a debate on this guy, Kai Havertz. So I guess if your name begins with a K, you fall into this category.
Whoa.
KA, actually. So highly talented. If you're low on confidence, here's your floor. It's off screen. It's really, really low.
That's fair. I mean, my confidence is pretty low. Ahmed had to loan me money before the podcast.
I think we're just dialed in right now, right?
It's terrible. KAs are not winning right now, okay? Holy shit. It's a part of a fucking pandemic. KAs
stand up, bro. Kai Havertz, Kadarius Toney, Kadeen Wiggins. It's time to breathe. Listen.
Gotta figure it out.
This could be. I don't know.
All right, but the grand thing of all of this stuff, it's week 1.
Exactly. So they're overreactions all over the place.
You cannot truly have nothing's truly indicative of what's to come in week one. The most you can do in week one is ride a high for as long as you can. Like there's a momentum thing. And you see the Lions, it's like, cool. That's good for them. Let's see how far they can ride that, right?
Yep.
But that's pretty much the only thing. There are tons of teams that come out looking like absolute garbage the first week and then look great the next week. You're right. The Chiefs overall have a lot to hang their hat on. The only thing I would say is a concern for me going forward is like, going into detail as far as the things I hang a hat on. Playing that way defensively against the Detroit Lions without Chris Jones.
I think it's great.
If that is, once again, it's hard to make anything indicative, but if that is a show of what's to come, holy fuck. Kansas City's been doing most of this shit without a defense, right?
Yes,
so
exactly. So you get Kelsey back.
Right.
Never mind Chris Jones, who's due back week 9. Seems like that's going to be a thing. It seems like he's going to come back. So, like, they're in a really good spot despite being 0-1, in my opinion. If, 100%. To your point, this is indicative, if what we saw last night is indicative of what we're going to see moving forward.
Do you know how many receiving touchdowns the Kansas City Chiefs, how many receivers had touchdowns last year for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I do not.
0.
Get the fuck out of here. 0. Well, Sky Moore in the Super Bowl.
Tony
in the Super Bowl.
Regular season.
0.
I'm probably lying. It's the
you didn't know.
But it's really low. Okay. I think it's an insanely low number. But the of course, I just told you Arizona had 171 and a touchdown last season.
Right.
So
I was like, hold on, it's 0.
So absolutely not. But it looked like it. Okay. But
sure.
the idea that, to me, it's just a lot of that offense rides on Kelsey.
McCole Hardman had 4 touchdowns. Juju Smith-Schuster had 3 touchdowns. Marquez Valdez had 2. Justin Watson had 2.
How did Mahomes have one of the greatest statistical seasons of all time without a receiver? But here's the thing: you bought it for half
Kelsey
a second.
caught all of them.
Yeah. You bought it for half a second.
I did.
And that's the thing. It's like immediately told you mine
because you deliver stuff with such confidence, dude. There's your talent. Go ahead.
Lying, great. I should be a lawyer. God damn it. I'm concerned, and that's so here, pull the curtain back on our fantasy league. I did 160 something mock drafts before we drafted.
162.
That was it. I picked Travis Kelsey at 145 of them. He was my number 1 pick, and I was trying to see whether or not Mahomes would fall to around 3 or 4, and I doubled up. And now the entire time I was doing that, I was still thinking to myself, you are relying on a 30-something-year-old tight end.
It's the same thing every year, though, with him, right? Like, that's just how amazing he is.
And look, I know the thing is, Tom Brady broke us in the sense that we were seeing things from a guy that we should have casted out, but he's 40-some years old, still doing stuff.
But Kelsey's sort of breaking us too, right? Like, think about it. His average draft position on Yahoo is around 6 overall.
Right.
He's 33. He's a tight end. I made that case last year. For example, I was like, oh, he's 30-something. The year before, he's 30-something. He produces. He's a first-round pick until he proves otherwise.
Outside of Tom Brady, the bill comes due.
Sure.
So even if you look at Rob Gronkowski, who to me, outside of Kelsey, is the most talented guy I've ever seen at tight end position. Still might be the most talented dude I've ever seen play the tight end position. Over
Shannon Sharp, pretty good. Anyway, there are a lot of tight ends.
There's a lot of tight ends, but I'm saying as far as this pure all-around blocking ability, as well as what it is you need to do in clutch, Gene, hard for me to go past Rob. And at the end of his career, the motherfucker was like the most hurt guy. Like it was just
it's true.
He was just he was a shell of himself. Like he was still catching, but he couldn't run like he used to. Couldn't break tackles the way he used to. Like he just looked like a shell of himself. And it was just like, all right, the bill usually comes due. And what you usually see is that either that you fall off a cliff or it's just nagging injuries. You're not as healthy as you usually are, and you kind of meander on. I would just say Kansas City, they should really figure out. They need to add somebody to the receiving room. They really do.
Kate, before we go, I just want to quickly, I don't know that they have to yet. I do think that they are a young group. They will get better. They got a taste. By the way, Mahomes even said so post-game. Like, hey, I've been telling these guys the whole offseason, you can't just walk in and win this game. And I think that got proven tonight. This was yesterday when he was talking.
Maybe it's a guy on the team. I'm just saying long-term.
Sure. They have guys.
They need a receiver to gel with Mahomes.
It will come with experience. It will come with targets. They are going to get those. They will be fine, in my opinion.
Because, I mean, at the end of the day, what do we also talk about? Receivers coming out of college looking greater than they ever have.
Certainly. So there's Sky Moore, there's Rashee Rice, there's Justin Ross, like who missed all last season with an ACL. They've got younger guys. If they get one of them to step up, K-Dot, that's that player and
Chris
Kelsey.
Jones and a couple picks and to go get Diggs out of Buffalo, or Chris Jones.
Kenny Galladay's a free agent, by the way. So just somebody that they could also look at.
Another mid-tier guy that'll fucking not do what they
He'll catch the ball.
He'll catch it, I guess.
Anyway, so one thing I wanted to touch on before we leave. You want to talk about an electric factory in the social media game and just what's going on. This Colorado football team, led by Deion Sanders, it was so cool watching them go to TCU and win that game. 20 and a half point underdogs. 20 and a half point underdogs. They win by 3. Who knows how they'll do the rest of the season? But that story, K-Dot, I thought super cool. And they're whoever's running their social media, whoever's creating these videos, it's electric. Like Deion is must watch once again. Now as a coach. It's incredible.
He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. So I absolutely loved it.
There was a story I wanted to tell for after pod, but I'll save it.
Okay. Well, so I mean, by the way, I don't know if you caught any of the highlights for the game or anything like that. Travis Hunter is incredible.
Travis Hunter playing both ways there, then he's got to pick one.
You think so? Because he played 145 snaps and he was like, even Joel Klatt, the color commentator, was like, how is he still running this fast? The on-field temperature was $120.
Here's the thing. Him doing what he's doing right now is very a la Deion in what it is that he used to do. But the idea is that it's the same way I was talking about Caleb Williams. Right now, you guys are making money as far as the NIL deals and everything. So that's cool, yes. Right? But what you're not doing is necessary. You're not being compensated directly for what it is you're doing on the field. There are business decisions that have to be made for you. You cannot spend that much time playing on a football field without the injury potential or other things not necessarily working out for you. We see the injury with dudes that just play offense and just play defense. The idea that you play both as much as he's doing, it looks great. And it should show what kind of athlete he is. Put it on tape for now that you're capable of doing it, but fucking pick one.
I think he may be one of those genuinely special, so I don't know if you even saw the video of him just playing basketball.
I'm not denying it. I'm not denying his ability.
It just clicks mentally for him.
Football
and I think he's got that
violent.
He knows that. They all know that. Deion knows that. It is an extremely violent sport.
Deion's the last person we want to get any input on this because he wanted to do this his entire career. Even when he was playing for the Dallas Cowboys, how many times was he begging to get on the field for offense?
Yeah, exactly.
And he did a few times and it looked great. And there was lots of times where you're like, oh my God, Sean Taylor with Washington, we could have put this dude on offense. We could have kept him back there as a punt returner. We could have kept him back there as a kick returner. We probably would have won more games. I think Sean Taylor with the ball in his hands, period, was just that much of a playmaker.
Incredible.
Same thing with Baltimore and Ed Reed. Ed Reed wanted to do things on offense. He wanted to do things on special teams. Be awesome, right? But here's what you realize. The more I have you on the field, the more likely you're going to get hurt. It's just the way of the game. So what I need to do is to get the most out of you for one particular thing. Maybe in crunch time, we can put you here, put you there. If there's a Super Bowl or a championship on the line, let's put you here, put you there. But overall, it's just day in and day out, game in and game out. I don't see it being the best business decision for this guy who's looking towards making hundreds of millions of dollars to put himself at that much risk. Okay. If he can still be a top flight talent on one of the two things.
I understand the argument you're making. I understand the
business decision.
Perhaps. I also think that, when you're at that age and you're that good, I don't know. I think it is one of those things where, hey, if that's where your energy aligns, and I think a lot of times we do this thing where we think with the guardrails up, and I get it because it's logical, right? I completely get it. You're looking out for the kid. That's what you're doing, right? You're talking about the hundreds of millions. You don't want to see him get hurt. I don't want to see him get hurt. No one wants to see him get hurt. He's a joy to watch, right? Just through one game in a Power 5 conference, you can tell this guy pops off the screen. That interception was ridiculous at the goal line. But I think there is also something there where when your energy's lined up perfectly with doing that extra thing that people are sort of advising against, and you're that age, right? You can recover quickly, stuff like that. I say go for it. I say go for it if that's something you truly want to do. You have a coach that's allowing you to do it, that's been there and done it before. I don't know. I'm all right with it. I'm personally all right with it.
I think the NCAA is akin to slavery. And
yes, and we have had that discussion.
Did you get to watch the Bishop Sycamore documentary?
No, I've not.
Here's what I'll do. This is where we'll table this, and we should come back and have more discussion on this
sure.
in our next After the Pod.
We'll do that.
Please watch that documentary. And then
where can I find it?
It's on Max, HBO Max, or Max now they
cool.
call it.
Okay.
Watch that, and then we should have a continuation of this conversation.
What's the name of the documentary?
BS High.
BS High? Okay. I'll check it out.
It's well worth watching.
Okay.
That's
sounds good. Perfect. Well, on that note, we're going to take off. You guys enjoy your weekend. May the Commanders win on Sunday. Hail to the Commanders. And hopefully we will have some shades on for the Monday episode. Until then, take it easy. BS High. I will go ahead and watch that.
Bye, guys.
Take it easy, everybody.
In DC, we're just hoping that you listen.